Hello. Today I'll be talking a little bit about my game design document. Uh, this game is going to be called, supposedly, it's still a working title, would be Exorcism Extermination. Uh, so I tried to do something with the fonts here. Never really tried this in a Google document before. I don't know if this looks good, but hey, works for me. Uh, my concept for this, since it is a mixed reality game, would be to have it be a sort of first-person shooter where the player hunts down demons or other monstrous beings. Um, the main examples that I could think of were werewolves, ghosts, vampires, maybe even zombies. Just have a nice variety of little folklore monsters that the player can hunt down. Players would use various pieces of equipment, and depending on which type of monster they're facing, they would have to use different types of equipment. So, for example, if they have, uh, they're facing against a werewolf, and then they would need to have some silver bullets, for example. Or if they're facing off against a ghost, they would probably need some holy water. I think I mentioned these exact same examples later on. But yeah. Uh, the genres would be more like action shooter and horror. I'm not sure which other genre I could put this game down as, at least in the way that I'm thinking about doing it. Um, since I want to do something a bit more towards the horror side of things, although I do not intend for this to be necessarily a horror game specifically, it's going to be more action focused. I do want it to have some more horror-ish elements, some more grotesque enemies with some things that would probably need to have a classification of 16 plus year olds. Um, the game would flow similarly to these other games where the players get some sorts of contracts, like the examples that I put on here is Phasmophobia and Power Wash Simulator. So there would be the main menu, and as soon as players start the game, they would be in this sort of hub lounge area. Since it's a mixed reality game, it's just, all that means is that there would be some items placed in front of them, which would be more specifically an item shop, a contract shop, and the contracts that they already have purchased. Um, I'll explain this a little later, but that's pretty much how the game starts. As soon as the player picks out a contract and gets their items set up, I'm still figuring out whether I want players to have all items available at all times or if I want them to have to build their own loadouts for each mission. Um, but yes, players would then just go on to this mission hunt contract, and this hub would sort of disappear all these items that would be in front of them, and they would have this little intermission time just to get themselves ready for the fight, and and then the monster in question, whichever one was uh, the one that they got the contract to fight against, this monster would show up, and the fight would begin. Should the player be defeated, they will return just to this mission select, not main menu. So let me change that. So should the player be defeated, they are going to return to this hub mission select slash shop. But if they defeat the monster, then they will receive the money from the contract and experience, both of which serve for different aspects in the game's economy. So the contract slash target select phase, it has a shop, and you can use uh, the experience points to get different contracts for more monsters, for more difficult versions of the monsters that you've already faced, and so that's how you use your XP. And the money that you earn from these contracts, you use it to buy better gear. You're going to have a basic version of all the different types of gear, just so you don't have to actually go out of your way and not be able to face a specific type of monster because nothing that you have is effective against them, you know. But you can have items that are more appropriate for certain monsters. Maybe you'll get a larger flask of holy water that contains more, well, more holy water for you to throw at your enemies, or maybe you get some a weapon that fires silver bullets in a spread shot instead of just as sort of a straight shot thing. Yeah, you know, that sort of purchase that you could make for different types of items for different types of enemies. Um, the game is going to use camera filters to give the players this horror movie perspective of their room. Since it's a mixed reality game, you're going to be seeing your surroundings, but you also want some a little bit of atmosphere going on over there. So, figure that a simple filter that darkens and highlights the cold colors in the room would be probably very effective. The aesthetic of items and monsters, I was thinking of something along the lines of Bloodborne, Resident Evil. Eventually, got to think about Supernatural, the TV show, or even the Van Helsing film from 2004. I want things to be scary, but I also want the player to feel like they can handle things. The monsters, they're gonna look horrid. They're going to be some nightmarish creatures, but that's kind of to trigger that uh, fight or flight reaction from the players. Um, so the gameplay, as I explained, you get the contract. In the contracts, there's going to be a little bit of information about what you're going up against. So there's going to be some talks about what kind of monsters they are, about what those monsters are known to be weak against. Just gonna be a little bit of background exposure. Say, oh well, there's this werewolf that's been hunting around this area. Should head over there probably, and that sort of thing. The player's not actually gonna be going anywhere necessarily. They're just gonna be in their room, but the werewolf in question, I'm picturing it just breaking through a wall of the room that the players are in and starting up a fight. Uh, let me see. Eventually, there will be monsters of the same type but simply stronger. So yeah, instead of a regular ghost, you could find some sort of ancient spirit that would behave slightly different, or maybe an alpha werewolf instead of a regular one. You know, the difficulty level, it's going to be challenging always. So think of, say, the From Software games, because I was thinking about them a lot while I was picturing how these fights would go. And, those are always challenging. There's always a learning curve. But at the same time that they're always challenging, they're always very rewarding. And you always feel like you can do it even if it's difficult, you know? We're talking about a regular human facing off against some nightmarish creatures over here, so I don't want it to be an easy task, but I also don't want players to feel overwhelmed. Uh, the balancing for this is going to be very difficult to do, but hopefully it's going to be fun. Uh, yes, okay, so there would be a small amount of time, maybe around a minute, to be familiar with where you place which items. I was thinking about this Batman Arkham Shadow game that I've seen some gameplay for. I actually linked a gameplay video for that in this document. And in that game, the players, the gadgets for the players are actually in different parts of their body. So I was thinking something along those lines for players instead of just a regular, hey, I'm gonna go on the menu and pick out this item and then switch it up. Understand? Um, and yeah, just get acquainted with your surroundings, figure out where the creature is going to come from. If you can somehow predict it, depending on the creature, you might. Um, After some time passes, the monster will make their appearance, and the player will engage in combat, and whoever defeats the other first wins. There you go. The monster, by the way, they don't get anything by defeating the players. Just maybe personal satisfaction. I don't know. I'm not a monster. The closest thing to puzzle structures in this game is just figuring out some weaknesses for monsters. I'm still figuring out if I should make monsters be affected by everything, but they're just more affected by certain items, or if they should be immune to certain things, and they can only be hurt by their weaknesses. So still need to do some brainstorming in this, but that's about as much puzzling as players are going to need to solve. Um, the objective is pretty simple: just survive the encounters, defeat the monsters, get more contracts, survive the encounters with those monsters, defeat them, and so on and so forth. Um, don't plan on having a lot of screens, just the main menu, the having the that mission select shop player hub section, and the combat, and then you go back to the mission select shop or player hub depending on. Well, not depending on either way, whether you win or not, you just go back there. The difference is whether you get rewards or not. Physics should be mostly realistic, so long as we're not talking about supernatural aspects, because you don't necessarily expect ghosts to follow the laws of physics. Um, the movement in the game, if I can make it work like this, I would like players to just be moving around in the room that they're in, instead of actually controlling things through a joystick. And they're gonna be able to see the surroundings perfectly. The only difference is going to be really the filter, the items that the players have, and the enemy. I was thinking about this dodge mechanic, but I think I'm going to scrap it. I'm probably just going to implement some sort of stun that players can give monsters if they time things correctly. Maybe a parry or some sort of mechanic similar to the gun in Bloodborne. Um, but yeah, I'll need to think about that for defense, because you're not going to be rolling around in your bedroom floor, even because a lot of people, I am aware that they probably don't even have space for that. Um, the objects and the interactions with them are pretty much just going to be the standard VR object interaction. You're able to grab certain items, you're able to throw these items, so long as there's not going to be a lot of objects around you, because this is just a mixed reality game. So pretty much all the objects you'll be interacting with are just your weapons and items, etc. Um, so yeah, just standard stuff. The actions are pretty much just going to be interacting with the contracts, interacting with the item and the item and contract stores, and using the weapons by either swinging, shooting, throwing them, whatever that weapon requires you to do. Um, the combat, I intend for it to be fast, to be challenging, uh, and you can just do different tactics. You can maybe fight um, melee with the monsters. You can try to do something more, maybe setting up traps of, say, I don't know, salt circles or whatever around you, just so you can, you know, do a more intellectual thing. You can try to keep monsters at a range, whatever you feel more comfortable with. But I want it to be fast. I want it to be challenging. I want it to be something that you feel like it could go either way. You could either defeat the monster, or the monster could defeat you. It just depends on your ferocity as a fighter. I think a lot about how much I like games like Doom and the Souls-like games. Um, because in those games you can die at pretty much any time. All it takes is a slip up and then you're done. But it's so fun, this challenge, this thing where players feel like, hey, I need to be more monstrous than these monsters, and I can do this. Um, that this is just some peak combat mechanics, and I hope I can translate that into a mixed reality game. The economy, like I've already explained, you get experience points and money from contracts. The experience points are used to purchase advanced contracts, and the money is used to purchase better equipment for the player. I was thinking of just implementing basic options like volume settings, having maybe a different quality for the weapons and monsters. Maybe have even in the cheats and Easter egg section said that it's not applicable at the moment, but maybe we could have something along the lines of like a really scary high poly model for the monsters, and then you have this low poly, pretty much a toy version of the scary monsters going around. You know, uh, maybe you could have different difficulty levels, which I actually talk about over here in the next section. Auto saving in between levels, that could be a thing. You could just decide that you wanted to do uh, a run for the game where you keep fighting monsters and you see how far you can last before you die. And then once you die, you just lose all the items instead of keeping the items. And um, so yeah, that's sort of basic stuff. Difficulty settings, volume settings, quality settings, and difficulty settings. Yep. For replaying and saving, I was thinking that players could retry the contracts however many times they'd like, but of course the health bar for the monsters is going to reset every time they start over the contract. If I actually manage to add a difficulty setting, you can even have a way to gain some experience or some money depending on how much damage you've dealt to the monster, how much time you've lasted in there with the monster. Now, of course, it's never going to be as much as you would gain should you defeat the monster, but at least you don't completely lose it. On the other hand, if you wanted to make the game more difficult than I was intending for it to be, you can just do that whole system that I talked about where it just doesn't save your progress, and once you die, you die. You lose everything, and you just start over as some sort of maybe like a new hunter. So, yeah, the saving should happen every time you die or you defeat a monster. Whenever you're at this hub area to select a mission, your progress gets saved there. So that's that. Um, Again, don't really, not really thinking about cheats and Easter eggs for now. Not really thinking about a story to this game either. Maybe having again some exposition in the contracts, talking about what these monsters are, what are they doing, why are you being hired to kill them. But um, that's that. I'm really not thinking of having this deep character-driven game. I just want to fight monsters. That's all. Okay, so the general look and feel of the world. Again, it's a mixed reality game, so as much as I'd like to be able to do something more advanced, I think that just having a filter that makes things darker and having some ambient sound whenever the players are not in the battle, and have some epic battle music whenever the players are in battle is going to be sort of all I can do with this type of project. Again, areas are not really applicable since this is a mixed reality game. The area is going to be whatever you are. um, the only characters that the player should encounter are the enemies, and all their information should be in item description and contracts. Uh, Again, levels, I wouldn't say it's applicable. The closest thing to that would be having more advanced and different types of enemies. Um, the training level, I was thinking about it, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make it just be sort of the first hunts that you go on, or maybe the first three, or maybe first five even. At least maybe even like the first time you face a new enemy, you have a little tutorial for it. But I feel like that's a bit too much hand holding. Not really my type of game. Uh, so yeah, but at least the very first one, there should be more some clearer instructions into. Okay, so look, this is this is the only thing that you can interact in the whole room. Please read it, and once you read it, okay, yep, okay. So this contract explains, hey, you have items that you can use. This thing here, it's better if you equip this item, but hey, you do your thing. And yeah, this is what this is. This is how contracts work, and there you go. Feel free to start your fight whenever you want. So Um, the visual system, I was thinking about what the HUD for players would look like. Maybe have them have a little watch that they can look at, and it sort of beeps whenever players are at low health. Something. What I was thinking of was, how in the Resident Evil games there's that little heart monitor that you can see. So something like that, but going on live and on your wrist maybe. Um, so yeah, and if you have a weapon that uses charges or bullets or any type of ammunition, there could be some sort of a semi-transparent HUD showing how much more you have of that ammunition, or you know how many more items of that type you have. Uh, Everything's gonna be first person, so I don't really think that there's any other systems that I should be adding over here. The controls are going to be basic virtual reality, mixed reality controls. You can grab items, you can swing them around, you can throw them, press triggers to shoot the weapons. Movement is going to be done physically around the room, hopefully. um, I'm still deciding on how I'm going to do audio, music, and sound effects, but I would like it to feel grand, scary, and to lead players to fight or flight response. I expand on that later on. I don't plan to have a help system. If you're supposed to struggle, you're supposed to just not get things on the first try for the most part. Just you're going to learn, you're going to get better, and you're going to defeat these enemies. I know that these types of games are not for everybody, but I don't think there's any game that's for everybody. So yeah, this is the type of thing that I like. Uh, each monster hopefully is going to behave in a specific way. So I was thinking werewolves, they were going to be more aggressive, more overwhelming. They're going to fight you head on. Well, ghosts are going to be more of a hit and run tactic. They're going to jump scare the player, and they're going to be there, and then the next second they won't, and then you turn around and they're there. Uh, the zombies are gonna get up close to the player, and then vampires are going to be using their magic from far away, this sort of thing. Not planning on having friendly NPCs. The most support AI that I'm thinking of is maybe a little bit of aim assist. But that's really it. Uh, Target hardware is pretty much VR equipment that supports this kind of game and allows the player to walk around. I have no idea of how I'm going to develop this. The game art that for some reason forgot to switch out the color for. I was thinking of having the weapon slash item shop be something similar to this. Just look a little bit like. This is probably a bad idea, but just have a bunch of different items laying around, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna have the players actually be able to hold on to all the different types of items. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have them be able to pick up, say, 5 different items, and you can use these 5 different items throughout the fight. But once they're done, and if you pick wrong, well, that's tough. Um, so yeah, I actually got this sort of layout thing from the Supernatural series because I really like this car. Um, and I like the way that they keep a bunch of anti-monster weapons in the trunk of the car. The Batman Arkham Shadow gameplay trailer, I'm not gonna play it over here, especially because I don't want to get copyrighted on my school YouTube channel, but it's right over here in the document if you want to take a look at it. The camera filter examples, again, I just want something that makes things darker and enhances the cold colors of the room. I think that this sort of gloomy vibe, it's about as good of a job as you can do without actually modeling a different room. You just look around and everything's dark and sort of ominous, and you know, I feel like this is the more correct vibe for the game. I would like for enemies to have a more realistic and scary design, despite not being very sure of how it would translate to mixed reality, because a lot of the mixed reality games that I've seen so far, uh, the models are a bit more simplistic. I know that there's VR games with more realistic graphics nowadays, but yeah, not sure how these would translate. I was thinking of a more human-looking werewolf, like these concept arts that I found over here. For ghosts, I was debating whether I wanted something more like this spectral version or something more along the lines of a uncanny valley thing. I really like the idea of uncanny valley, especially for vampires. I could not find a good picture of a vampire that did not really seem human, but while this one is an actual artwork, I'm pretty sure that this one was made in AI. And what I thought would be a nice idea is to have vampires sort of look like they are AI generated. You know, they look human, but they look wrong. You know, they look a bit too perfect, a bit too smooth. Something is off about them. That uncanny valley stuff, really. Um, yes, so sort of glowy eyes, sort of superior aura about them. Um, I was thinking about adding other images, but yeah. This document is already 16 pages long. For the music, again, I would like the sense of epicness, grandeur, and power to take over players as they immerse themselves in their fights. This game is gonna have. I'm just reading the whole thing because I probably could not come up with something like this on the fly. The game's gonna have some really scary enemies, some terrifying things. Nightmares come to life, who are actually coming after the players and challenging them. And the goal for this game is not to make players afraid of these things. It's not for you to get scared of the big werewolf that's going to try and mangle you in your bedroom. It's actually for you to get hyped and actually decide, hey, you know what? Bring it on. You're big, but I'm mean. So, you know, I'm gonna mess you up, guy. So, yeah, I got a few soundtracks. Most of them are from um, Dark Souls and Castlevania, but they all have this sort of common denominator of um, this is an epic fight. There's great forces at work over here. Um, and one of you is going to come out victorious, one of you is not. So, you know, get on with it and do your best. That's it. That's pretty much the idea that I have so far for exorcism extermination. I want it to be something that really hypes up people, and it's, you know, you become a monster more vicious than the actual monsters that you're fighting against. I think that type of concept is just always awesome. So, thank you for watching this. It's probably like a 30-minute video by now. So, yeah. Uh, thank you for the semester, and see you.